we're going to no longer confine ourselves to that one box. We're going to lay out our UVs in several boxes, and then Substance will be able to read that and then utilize that information. Okay? So lay out the UVs like you normally do. So we go through, let's say, this bin here. I like to isolate it so I can just focus on that one piece. I also think it helps. I'm going to duplicate it so I don't destroy the original location of that one. It helps to have them like flatter, so you're not just like at some weird angle. So if you can find one of your pieces that is more like 90 degrees up and down, then that's going to help you out. I'm also going to freeze the transforms on it, and that should be good. Okay. So freeze your transforms. I go to, let's say on this piece, I'd go to automatic. Let's see what these look like. I can turn my texture on, turn this image off, and then that got me pretty close. And then I can just go through and maybe clean up some of these pieces here. And a lot of times when I'm cleaning up my UVs, I'll take those and just move them out of the way. Just get them into their own area. And then I can go to my edges and just look at and see which edges want to connect with what. And I see any. There we go. So the very top of this wants to connect to the bottom of that. Okay, so I just marquee this. I hold Control, which is a deselector, and grab that. And then I move and so. And then I'm assuming this one, yep, that one wants to go there. So I'll do the same thing. And then let's see, any of these. Yep, these ones are over there. So I can do the same thing. Grab this, hold Control. And then let's see these. Yep, those ones are that one. All right, and then this one wants to connect to that one, so we'll do that. Same thing here. Now eventually I'll hit a point like this where the top wants to connect to the bottom. I don't want to do that because then it'll overlap itself and then it won't be laid out. It'll be basically back to where we started. Okay, this one here, same thing. Click these. Oops. Now it jumped away, both pieces jumped away. So that means that it probably attached itself somewhere over here. Yep, you can see it right there. See, it's trying to attach itself here. I don't want that. So I'm going to make sure I select only the pieces that are affected, then move and so it jumps back there. There we go. And then the same thing here. I missed that piece, so I'll just click on that and sew it. Okay, let's see. That is going to connect there. That'll connect there. And then I think this piece should probably be cut off so that that piece can go down here. Because that will make that a little bit happier. And the same thing here. I'll cut that. And move and sew that. Okay, so now that's all that can get cut out for that one. And then what about these? Let's see where these want to go. All right, those want to go, it looks like right here and right there. I think I've gotten this as small as I'm going to get it without causing too big of a mess. Okay, so that's laid out. So now I'm going to go back to my unfold. I'll show you the options again. If it helps, take a screenshot of what you're seeing here. Okay, I think that's it. This is OneNote. If you've used OneNote before, it's awesome. If you haven't used it, it's still awesome. My render settings. So you can make these tabs inside here. Oops. Let's call this Maya settings. So then on the right side, I can say this is UV layout. And if I go to my snipping tool, I say new, grab that window, and then I can just say copy and paste. So now I have that item like saved to my notes. So anytime I do UV layout, I know I can jump into my notes and look at this thing right here. I'll do the same thing when I get to the next one, okay? So those are my settings for that. Apply, good. And then I'll do layout also. I'll use the snipping tool again. New. And copy. And paste. What? I just moved that up? Yes, good. Okay. So the things that we manage inside here, we want to set this to 4096. We set this to preserve 3D ratios, translate shells, 4096, 5, 5. Okay. For all of our stuff, that's what we're going to be setting it to. There is a spot at the bottom that says shell distribution, and it'll actually distribute our stuff across several shells itself. We don't want that. We want to manually put them in the right spot. That way we control what goes where, okay? If you tell it to do it, you grab all the pieces and you say, do it, it'll put parts of the seed over here, parts of the seed over there. Then when we texture them, it's very difficult to texture things. All right, so 4096, blah, 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 layout. And there we go. So now this is laid out pretty good. We could adjust things if we saw that there was an area to adjust. So if, let's say, all these pieces, we lay out the UVs, whoops, and we only end up using like that much of this, I would maybe cut some stuff up and relay it out so that it fills that square better, okay? So once I have these in here laid out nice and neat, I'm going to delete the history on it, and let me move this one aside. And then I'm going to transfer the UVs to these pieces. So I'm going to go to Transfer Attributes, Component, Transfer. Grab the next one, Mesh, Transfer Attributes, still Component, Transfer. And I can just hit G to redo that command. Correct. So we always select the original first, then shift-click that one. You can do it, sometimes I'll do this, depending on what the item is. So I'll do this one, and I'll do that way, and I'll do it this way, and then that way. Okay, so sometimes I'll go around like that. It doesn't matter. And then immediately after, I delete the history. Okay, so now that each of these have their UVs laid out, there they are, they're all stacked on top of each other. Okay, because they're all in the exact same spot. So I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to grab the shell. And where's my window at? Oh, that window's hiding. Hide toolkit? Oh, there it is. Went that screen. So in the toolkit here that I'm going to slide into the side of my UV editor, there's a transform. And in here, I'm going to say, move this 1 unit up. So it takes literally all those UVs and just slides it up one box. Then I'll go to the next one. There's the next one. Grab these. Now I have to remember that there's one right above it. So this one is going to go 1 up and 1 over. And then I'll grab the next one. I'll go 1 up and then 2 over. I'll grab the next one. 1 up and 3 over. I'll grab the last one. 1 up and 4 over. And then I can double check. If I grab all of them, I should see they're just side by side. Perfect. Whoops. Keep doing that. Keep docking stuff. All right, and then if I click on my other pieces that are inside here, you'll see that each one of these is in a separate area, okay? What are these ones? Oh, those are the poles. So in my original one, I had the poles also in that same area, just because they were kind of all part of the same piece. So I grabbed these and this. Let's grab this, this, and this. And then I did my layout. And then I went 1 up and 1, 2, 3 over. Okay, and that fit more stuff inside that box. So let me go back to my original one before you made me screw it up. And if you see any of the stuff from, all right, so now we're back here. There is my thing. I'm just going to double check my UVs and make sure they're still laid out good. Yes. Okay. Now it doesn't matter where you go vertically or over. I like to keep them all kind of together. So as long as you don't go too far to the right or too far up, you should be fine. So if you go like, I think the right way, like going this way, you're limited to 10, and then going up, you're limited to like 80 or something, more than you need. So as long as you kind of separate it, you're good. Just don't leave spaces because it's kind of odd. All right, so then what I want to do is I'm just going to give these some colors. So I'm going to hit 5 in here. So I'm just going to apply some colors just so it's easier to see when I get into the other software. Why didn't that go? Because I have something assigned to it already. There we go. Okay. So I'm assigning all the different items specific colors. And this will make it easier when I get into Substance to actually assign which colors go to what items. So I'm just going to mesh display, apply color, pick a random color, doesn't matter what, just random contrast between all the colors. I'm obviously picking like parts and giving them the same color. And I could just keep this open, I don't know why I keep closing it. Yellow. I think I have a cap on this side, yes. Red, black. Okay, so there's all my colors. Now before, when we did this, we exported it out as an OBJ. This time I'm going to export it as an FBX, and that will allow my colors to transfer into the other software. So I'm going to call this water wheel, export class, and then just choose FBX from that list. So now I go into Substance, I say new, I go and select PBR metallic roughness, find my geometry, which is under the 2520, under weapon, under scenes. There it is. And then this is where we're going to use that. So if this isn't checked, it won't work. So we have to tell Substance that we are bringing in a multi-tiled texture. So we click that button, leave this at 1024, and hit OK. Now what's going to happen is it's going to bring in the texture. So there it is right here. But it's only going to allow us to work on them one at a time. Okay? So right now, here's all of these. And then over on the top right where it says texture set list, here's all the different UVs. So these are all the different spots where I have my UV stuff set up. I'll double check before I do any painting in here to make sure I don't have any transparency. I shouldn't, because I've already fixed that. Yes, good. I'll check for smoothness. So if this is as smooth as I want it to be, this is as smooth as it's going to get. So if you look at how rough some of these spots are like this, you'll see that, you know, that's what it's going to look like. If I wanted a smoother version of this, whoops, I'm going to go to project configuration, go to select, and I actually have a high-res one that I exported out. This high-res one, I did just like we did before. Smooth it out, re-unfold, relay out the UVs, okay? And then still keep them all separated. Yes. So this will import a higher resolution one where these are actually perfectly round. Well, when you zoom in that close, it won't be. Okay, so the same idea is there. So I'm going to go to my, I need a bigger screen, not that. I'm going to go to my window views, display settings, no, not display settings, shader settings, there we go. Nope, not shader settings either. There, texture set settings. No, texture set list. I'm going to go to bake. I'm going to make sure I have this use low poly as high poly mesh clicked. Under ID, I'm going to set this to vertex color, and then I'm going to say bake all texture sets. Now, because we have, in this case, I have 6 different UV layouts. I believe that's what I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes. I have 6 different UV layouts, so it's going to do the baking for all 6 of those at once. So I don't have to go back and redo them. Sometimes if you have something more complex, you may bake one, verify that the one is good, and then go back and bake all. Because obviously this process could take, on some complex objects, it could take 20 minutes or a half hour or whatever. I've also baked this at a lower setting, so I'm baking it at 1024. Before I do my final one, I'd want to bake it at a higher setting so that it actually has a higher resolution texture map that it's creating. So it's almost done. Success. Okay. So there's all my maps for this one, and if I switch to one of my other texture sets, you'll see there's the maps for that one, and then here's the maps for this one. Okay, so right now, like I said, my bake is at 1024. Before I do my final export, I would come back in here, set it for 4096, and then do bake all again. This is all of our textures are being calculated off of these. If this is not high enough, then it won't look as good. Cool. So now let's get into actually texturing this. So this piece here is that. That's the chair. Okay, yep, so this is everything, and then these other ones are just the chairs. So I'm going to go to my Smart Materials. I'm going to find one that I want to use as my starting point, probably the walnut. There it is. I'll drop it on there, and there we go. Okay. Now let's say that I wanted different pieces, again, to have different materials. So let's say I wanted this to be metal. Okay. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to go to the mask area, and I'm going to say add mask with color selection. Now before we did the colors inside here, if I switch with the B key, there we go, these are the colors. So as an FBX, those colors transferred into Substance, and now I'm going to use these colors to specify what gets what. So I hit M to get back to that. I'm going to go to color selection. I'm going to find, there it is, properties color selection. And all I'm going to do is say pick color, and then say I want this to be wood right there. And so what it's going to do is it's going to remember you chose this color. So if I were to come back later and upgrade my model or something, as long as that was still the same color, it'll work. It'll still remember all those. When I do the other one that I showed before, where we're doing this picking based on polygons or based on objects, this doesn't update. So if I were to come back and realize, oh, I forgot to put screws along this, or I forgot to do whatever, I have to go back and basically re-pick all those pieces again. Okay? It's a huge hassle. With this color selection, it remembers, hey, you chose red, that's going to be that wood color. And if you want to change it, you can change it. Cool. So that's the wood one. So then I'll just shrink that. I'll get a stained metal. I'll drop that onto layer 1. I'll use my color mask selection. I'll say pick color, and I want this. And oops. This and yeah, that was already there. Cool. All right, so that works. Okay, now let me jump over to one of my other ones. So I want to texture the chairs, so I have to jump over to the chair layer, And then I can do the same thing. So I drop, let's say, a steel on here, go to my color selection, use my color picker, pick yellow, drop on a wood, use my color selection, pick that. Did I pick the same color? I did. Subtract that one, pick green. There we go. Cool. Now, look at how cool this is. All I have to do now is just take these two layers and copy them. And then when I go to 103, which is the same exact setup, I just paste it. And it remembers, oh, you picked yellow and green. Cool. I go to 4, paste that one. And it remembers. Go to 5, paste it. Go to 6, paste it. And there we go. Now, if I decided I want to make changes to any one of these, I could jump into 6 or 5 or 4 or whatever it is, make changes on this one, then just copy it to all the other ones, and it'll all update. If I decided, hey, I want to change, the wood here, I really wanted to make it look a little bit dustier. I go into the wood, I go to the top of this, I go to this, which is a fill layer. I pick my color. Let me switch around so we can see it. And just so it's easier to see, I'll make it purple. And then I'll change the color afterwards. And then I go to my smart masks and I just choose what kind of smart mask I want on there. Here's a soft dust. Here's another soft dust. Here's dust occlusion, dust dirty, dust stained, subtle dust, edge damage. Let's say edge damage. Just drop that onto here. And then you can see all the little bits of purple that are on there. Okay, and again, that's why I make it purple, so it's easier to see where it's affecting. Then I can go into this and make it more like dusty. And then I can go into the mask, go into this. There it goes. And then adjust, let's say, the balance. Scroll down, maybe play with some of the texture of it. Here's curvature, so this is how much the curvature is being used. And none of those are being used. Here's some more stuff that we can play with. There we go. So let's say I like that. Now all I have to do is just take this, copy it, go to the next one, go into the wood, and just paste it in there. And so now the next one has the same thing. Then go into the next one, and paste it in there. Okay, and if you don't like it's obvious that it's repeating, so this pattern right here is exactly the same as that pattern. I can go to the mask editor, go to my properties, and somewhere in this list, there should be just a way to offset the texture some. Nope, nothing happening there. Let's see what else. Seed, random. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong one. That's why I'm not seeing anything change. There we go. So as I click that seed random, we're getting different results on that piece. Then I can go to number 5 and do the same thing. If you have, obviously, a second screen, it definitely helps to have your stuff over there. Back to the mask, back to the mask editor, back to that seed random, and there we go. Okay, I'm also going to go, let's say, back to 1. And I want to put on the wood area, I want to have another fill layer, and I want some just darker areas inside here. It doesn't look very dark in there. So I'm going to make this like a dark orangey brown color. Like that. And then I'm going to go to cavity rust. Let's see if we can play with the mask editor to get some decent results. Go. All right, Alright, so it looks like it has a bit more thickness now than it did before. I can use the eyeball to see the before and after, and again, it's just a nice way to add more detail to this. Cool. While I'm at it, I should also look at some of the settings that this is affecting. So right now, this is affecting the color, the height, the roughness, the metal, and the normal. I'm going to go to my color. Obviously the color is the color. So whatever color I choose here, that's the color that that specific material is going to be. Okay? So I darkened this obviously because I wanted it to look darker. If I go to height and I play with this, you'll see how it actually bumps it in or bumps it out depending on which way this is going. I may not want any bump on there, so I can just turn that off. Basically that material, that layer is not going to affect that. Same thing with roughness. If I pull the roughness down, it'll be shinier in that area, and you can kind of see it as I move my camera around, especially right there, how shiny it is. If I pull this up, it's going to make it a bit softer, okay? So if I had something like dust, dust isn't very reflective, so it should be rougher in those areas. Just so you can see too, if I took the roughness down, I took the metallic up, you can really see in those spots where it's like super reflective. Take that metallic down, take the roughness up, now it's nice and soft. Okay, and also notice that because we're working with those separate texture maps, there's a lot of detail fitting inside here because of that. And this is still a lower resolution image. This isn't 4096 or anything. Now let's say that we wanted to add some extra stuff on top of what we've been doing. So here's my wood walnut. Yes, that's fine. All right, let's open that up. I'm going to go and drop in another layer. This is just going to be a paint layer. It's a regular layer here. Okay, so I'm going to go to that. All right, so I'm going to go down to my brushes. And if I go here to any of these brushes, there's chalk bold. And I go and pick some colors. I need to pull this out. There we go. Maybe that'll work. All right, so I'm going to pick a color here, so let's say I pick red. I can draw right on here with red, just like a regular paintbrush in Photoshop. The same things with height and roughness and all that come into play too. So if I take my height up as I paint, you'll see how it's actually going to look like it's 3D. Like it's actually bumping, out of there. And then if I go the other way, obviously it'll look like it's pushed in. Set that back to where it was. If I go to roughness, same thing. I'm painting the roughness and the color. If I pull it down, it'll be really reflective and shiny. And if I go to metallic and no roughness, it's basically going to be like a mirror that I'm painting on here. It's a red mirror. White. There you go. Now the reason it's distorted is because the layers underneath it are still affecting it. So the bump from all the other stuff that's inside here is still making it look like it's bumped out and kind of distorted, but you can definitely see that looks like it's like spray painted with chrome or something. Let's take that back down. Let's take the roughness up. Good. And then the normal is just this specific thing for now. Now we can also go in here to our stencils, and these are just black and white images. So if you go into Photoshop, you draw something literally in black and white. Where it's black, there will be no drawing. Where it's white, there will be a drawing. And you grab something like, let's just say this thing. Now I have a stencil. So if I hold down S, which brings up my stencil stuff, I zoom my stencil in. I move my stencil over with the middle mouse. And now as I paint, you'll see how it's painting that stencil right on top of it. So if you had like a logo you want to drop in there, like here's my logo I want to put on all my stuff, you could obviously do that. And then if you also add in the factor that, you know, maybe I want to also put in, there it is, some height to this, As I paint this, now I'm painting some height in there. Now you'll see that this is obviously really low resolution. So let's take this up so we can actually see what it'll look like at a higher resolution. So under one of my windows here, no, that's all that. Window view, display settings, shader settings, texture set settings, there it is. I'm going to set this to 4096. And it's going to take a second. Our system will go a bit slower, but then you'll be able to see at how high resolution this texture actually is coming across. When you take something while we're waiting for this, come on. Oh. Stop that on? No. Nope, that's Camtasia just popping that up. All right. There we go. All right, so let's take a square here. And just so you can see the resolution and what difference it makes, okay? So pretend that this is a 1024 image. If I make this 2048, transform. All right, so I'm just going to set this to 100 by 100. There we go. Unchain that. All right, so this is pretending it's a 1024 by 1024. So I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to double it. What? $200. Take that again, scoot it over, tie these together this time. Okay. So if this is 1024 and we doubled it, that's 2048. If we double that, it's 4096. Okay. So that's how much more detail we're able to fit inside here because we've increased the size of that. So if you look at how much detail would fit inside of this image, I mean, it's minuscule compared to that, okay? This is 4 times as small as the other one. So when we get here, and I turn my stencil off, that's what I don't like about having not enough windows. Just close that. You can see how much more high resolution that stencil is. Now, even though I painted it at the lower resolution, it remembers this is what you painted and this is where you painted it, and it is able to adjust to that. Now, it's definitely not a super high resolution, but it's a lot higher than it was before. When we're back here, we won't notice the difference, okay? If you watch, I think it was the first Avengers, at the end of it, they do all like the super close-ups of like the shields and Iron Man's suit and everything. It's like amazing detail that they have in all of that. Each one of those props was probably spread out over several maps, and each map probably had 4,000 pixels at least to it. Okay, so any of these things you want to add, you can definitely just add them just like that, and that's like a neat way just to like more detail. And where'd they go? Oh, there's the stencil. So I can click on here and you'll see all the different stencils that are available inside this for you to use. And you can see this is how slow it's going at 4096, which is why we typically don't want to work at 4096. See, it's still like updating. See that bar? It's still updating. All right. Let's open this, which is a finished piece. There we go. Alright, so this one is a finished texture. He's only on 4 slots, but it's the same process. Whether I'm grabbing faces and using that assigned material to it, or I'm painting in the stuff here, it's all the same, okay? He has several layers that go into making him look the way he does. You can see kind of like this dirt layer that's on top. It really, in my opinion, makes this kind of a bit more realistic, having those scuff marks and scratch marks on him, versus this, which maybe is a bit too clean, especially because there's this layer and I think I have stuff inside here. Yeah, so that's the original there, without this, without that. So that was the original. Looks nice, but I want him to have a little bit more character, a little bit more personality to him. So that's what he looks like now, okay? So when you are all done inside Substance and you're ready to export it out, the process is similar but not the same. So we would go to, first we would go to Bake. We would make sure that we are set to 4096 here. We would bake all of our texture sets, make sure all these are clicked. Bake all our texture sets and let it do its thing. It might take 10 minutes or so. Then we would go to Export Textures. We pick from this list Arnold 5 UDIM standard. Okay? UDIM stands for those texture maps. That's what we're importing and exporting out. Each one of these will export out this: a base color, a metalness, a roughness, a normal height, and an emissive. We'll get into customizing that a bit more later. We still pick our location at the top. We still tell it to be TIFFs. We change here all of these to 4096. Okay. Now when it exports these out, it's going to export out, in this case, base robot 001, base color .1001. So it'll export out each one of these tiles as a separate image group. So if you had 20 tiles, you would have 20 groups of all these textures. Okay. So then you would hit export, and then it goes out. Now let's jump to Maya, and I'll show you the process for putting it all back together. Let me set my project to robot. That's where he lives, and he is right there. Turn off this. So I'm going to assign basically just the default material to this first, just so we can see where I've isolated some of those areas, okay? If it's typically an object that I know I'm not going to be spending too much time on, I don't need to assign a color to each area. If there's stuff that I know I'm going to be like isolating, then I would assign the colors. So I'm going to grab everything here. I'm going to assign a new material and AI standard surface. And then this process is going to be the same as to how we go about this. So I'm going to say robot, oops, material. I go to the color, I click the swatch, I find my file, and then here's all my files. So this is what I got out of Substance. So that's all the files that go with it. And if you look at the sizing of this, obviously these files can get like huge because we have so much information. So I'm going to find any one of the colors that are here. So there's 01 color, there it is, that's a TIFF. There's 02 color, 1002 base color right here, 1011 base color, and 1012 base color. Okay, so I'm going to grab any one of these base colors, and you'll see how it assigns it to the stuff. But basically what's happening is, because the UVs for this are, in Maya's mind, they're all in the same spot. They're not. They're all offset. We have to tell it to offset each one. So I'm going to go down to UV tiling and say UDIM. And then I will say generate preview. And then what this is going to do is actually offset each one of them into their correct tile. Okay, so Maya knows to do this. 2 versions ago, this wasn't there, and we actually had to manually move each one, and that was like a huge to-do. But now we don't have to. That should also be off. Okay, so now I'll grab the back button, and I'll go to metalness, and I'll do the same thing. Click on File, click on Folder, find any of the metalness TIFFs. There it is. Set this to off, set this to UDIM, and say Generate Preview. Because this is a slider one, so we have a 0 to 1 range, I have to set my color balance to alpha's luminance. And that would work. So yeah, we can see them. And I'll go to my roughness here and do the same thing. Go to File, find my roughness, set this to off, set this to UDIM, set this to generate, and then set this to alpha's luminance. And then under geometry, I'll find that. Go to File, set this to tangent, and then find one of my normal ones. Set this to off, set this to Mari, UDIM. And now you'll see it's kind of dark, not really too much. Sometimes you have to set this color space to raw before it reads nice textures like it just did. So it was kind of like weird looking. I set that to raw and then it was good. Just how it's interpreting that file information. And that's it. Okay, now if I go back to Substance, I change something, I open this back up, it's all set. Okay, it remembers all my settings. So for your simple prop, you'll do another 360. Okay, you don't have to do the full 360. You can do like a 180 or something, or a sweep. I just don't want it to be just like a static still. That's kind of boring. And if you have some animation stuff on there you want to throw on, then you can animate some stuff. Oops. He's a short robot. Cool. And then your Substance file is on the P drive. Where are we at? 2520. Nope, 40. Robot. I saved it in my source images where I throw all my Substance files. Except for this one, apparently. Where'd you go? Files, save as. Oh, animated stick. Why is it on there? Oh, I know I throw it in there. Never mind. Never mind. Where are you at? There it is. So here's my robot Substance file, 4 gigs. Okay, so as you start adding tiles and you start doing this stuff, the file sizes are going to get huge. So don't wait until the last minute to back your stuff up because it'll take forever. Okay, and then as I'm saving this, I'm saving iterations. It literally took like 3 minutes. When I would hit Control S, it would take like 3 minutes for this to save my stuff. Oops. Cool. So that should be plenty of stuff to kind of work through with this one.